and I'm going to edit it down and add in some of that video that you provided, some of the video and some of the
Yep.
photos you've given, and then I'm going to put it up on 7 Spot. And if you wouldn't mind, I know that you don't have it in your possession anymore, but I would love you to just tell us briefly about RENNMAX.
Ah, okay. Michael and I were going to build a 7 for racing. And
Yes.
I know Bob Britton, and I went to him and
Hmm.
said, "What do you got?" And he says, "Well, I'll build you a chassis." So he built me one of his chassis off his jig, which is an
Hmm.
exact replica of a Lotus 7. Now, you can appreciate Lotus 7s were a very small car, little,
Hmm.
tiny, narrow. Two big, fat, old ball, ugly guys like me wouldn't fit into them side by side. Very narrow,
Yeah.
little car. So
Yeah.
he built this car for me, and he
Hmm.
decided to put inboard rocker arm front suspension on it.
Yeah.
He built that. I brought it back to my factory, where Mike and I completed the car to what you see in all the photographs. That's with the Honda motor in it.
Yeah.
That Honda motor is just devastatingly quick. 265 brake horsepower and 9,500 RPM out of the box without tuning it,
Yeah.
without mucking about with it. Reliable horsepower. The thing is such a scary motor car to drive.
Yeah.
I've driven all sorts of cars in my day, and I've got to tell you, it's the scariest thing I've ever driven. And once we finished it, I was back and forward to Bob virtually on a weekly basis, getting approval to do little things. And what do you think about this? And can I do that? He
Hmm.
helped me all the way along. And in the end, I'd finished the car. Well, we were building a race car, but
Hmm.
a guy came to me and said, "How much do you want for the RENNMAX?" I said, "Mate, it's not for sale." He said, "Mate, everything's for sale for a price. Think of a number." And I thought of this really, really stupid number. And he says, "Okay, can you do it with red with a gold stripe?" And so we did. So once it was finished and road
Hmm.
registered,
Hmm.
it went to a new owner. But it was a fantastic little car to drive, just
I know.
fantastic.
I look, and it. What a gorgeous, gorgeous color combo. It looks
Now, if
fabulous, and
you
I love the detail work on the. I guess the exhaust cover. It's just like it's
if you
gorgeous.
if you look at one of the photographs that I sent you a photograph of our car collection at the time out front of my factory.
Yes, I
And
saw it.
my factory, I
Hmm.
was 42 years a specialist in automotive exhausts.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I really hate is Clubmans with ugly exhausts.
Yeah.
When I built that car, I built the headers off the motor to come
Hmm.
because the Honda motor, all the exhaust is on the right hand side.
Hmm.
When an exhaust system runs down the right hand side of a car in Australia, it can have a side outlet in front of
Yeah.
the wheel. But if it comes out the other side, which most Fords or
Yeah.
4AGEs and those sorts of things, they go out the other side, and you've got to run it right to the back of the car because you can't
Hmm.
have your car blowing black smoke on the lovely little Dolly Bird's white stockings. So
Yeah.
it's got to come out this with the RENNMAX. It came out the driver's side. So all of that is a fiberglass cover that covers everything from the headers to the tailpipe.
Hmm.
And that includes the catalytic converter and the big giant muffler I had to put in there because we have to comply to 96 decibels.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was a bit of a compliance issue, but the whole issue was a compliance thing in Australia. I don't know what it's like for 7 builders in other countries, but in Australia, that car had to comply to all the current ADRs, Australian design rules, for that
Hmm.
year. So that means that all the pollution had to be upgraded to run low emissions. Braking systems had to be tested. I had to do a lozenge and twist test on the chassis, which I think I've sent you some photographs of
Yes.
that
Yeah.
actually happening in the workshop.
Hmm.
So yeah, a lot of things like had to have a seat belt light to say that your seat belt's not connected. So there was a lot of
Hmm.
electronic issues, and Hondas being Hondas, their ignition system is integrated in a whole wiring loom. So we
Hmm.
had to put a Motec computer in it and have it all tuned especially. So yeah. lot of mucking about.
Well, it's gorgeous, and I'm going to include all those photographs that you've provided. It'll be eaten up because, quite frankly, well, everything in Australia we don't know about, but in particular RENNMAX. I did not know that RENNMAX made a Clubman. It's just like that was news.
Do you know how RENNMAX got its name?
Ren, I believe. Well, I'll let you tell the world, but
Yeah, well,
I do.
I said to Bob,
And
I said
because
to Bob one
you
day.
told me, so why don't you tell everybody else?
Okay, well, I asked Bob one day, where did you get the name RENNMAX from? Because it doesn't make sense. And he said, well, Ren is German for race, and it's just, as far as I'm concerned, is racing to the max. So it was RENNMAX. That's just how it came about. And they've been RENNMAXes since the late 50s.
Yeah, and Bob is an interesting story in itself. What is Bob's last name?
Britton, Britton. Yeah.
Okay, and he's a young lad, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's 84 or something.
84.
Yeah, he's 84.
And he's still at it, is he?
Yeah. Oh, still making it. He gets halfway through a project and then he figures out what his next project's going to be. And
That's
people
fabulous.
give him things. Like a neighbour came up just recently and said, oh, I've got this old BMW you can have. So he turned it into a Maserati 3000 copy. You know, he's just and he likes his Clubman, and he built a single seat motorcycle powered Clubman with a roof in it because he didn't like getting wet in the rain, so he built one with and it looks a bit like the fuselage of a World War II fighter, and it's on four wheels. The motors in the back. He's also built a Clubman with a transaxle rather than a drive shaft and diff. Like he's just when he's halfway through a project, he's looking for the next project to build.
Yeah.
The last one I saw him doing was the Maserati, but I know he's doing something else at the moment, but I haven't been to see him for a while because of the COVID lockdowns.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're doing the virtual and socially distanced sevens, because we're all kind of in this mess together. But I'm going to say this because we've been going for 23 minutes, and believe me, we can do this again another time. But I'm going to put a bow on this one, and I'm going to say thank you because it's amazing. I mean, I'm amazed because I'm now jealous. I want to be Australian.
Well, as I said to you at a phone call once before, Jim, that in Australia we didn't have the pleasure of having custom built one-off race cars that come out of factories. We were competing with cars that were built up out of what we could find in wrecking yards, which is why we have a whole lot of surplus, Second World War surplus tank-engined race cars, which is what the Maybach was. And things like the Ford V8s were very popular. And Clubman, because they were cheap and easy to build, a lot of Clubmans in Australia. Big, I've seen fields at racetracks of 30 plus Clubmans.